Roll call.
Yes. Chairman Cox,
Here.
Vice Chairman Rajaratnam,
Here.
Commissioner Ferris,
Here.
Commissioner Hayman,
Here.
Commissioner Reed.
Here.
5 present. We have a quorum.
Commissioner Reed, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Please stand.
Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Be seated. Do I have an approval for the agenda?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
I'm sorry. Let me turn that off. Do I have an approval of, we need a roll call.
Chairman Cox.
Aye.
Vice Chairman Rajaratnam,
Aye.
Commissioner Ferris,
Aye.
Commissioner Hayman,
Aye.
Commissioner Reed.
Aye.
5 ayes. Motion carries.
Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of January 28th and March 24th?
I'll make a motion. I will second.
Chairman Cox,
Aye.
Vice Chairman Rajaratnam,
Aye.
Commissioner Ferris,
Aye.
Commissioner Hayman,
Aye.
Commissioner Reed.
Aye.
5 ayes. Motion carries.
We move into the public comment section of our meeting. Persons wishing to address the Commission on matters that are within the Commission's jurisdiction and do not already appear on the agenda may do so at this time. Pursuant to the Brown Act, the Planning Commission may not take action on an item that does not appear on the agenda. Speakers are limited to 5 minutes. The public comment section of the agenda is limited to a total of 1 hour. Each speaker is asked to provide his or her name. Do we have anybody that is called in that wishes to address the Commission?
Not yet, but there's about a 20-second delay.
Okay. So for those that are out there, there's about a 20-second delay between what you see and what we see. And so if you feel like there's a lag at times, that's the reason that we're doing this. Okay, seeing no callers calling in on the public comment section, we will move on. Tentative track map 6679 extension consideration for the 12-month extension for tract with 87 lots located in the northwest corner of Gateway Boulevard and Upjohn, APN 080010-18. Staff report.
Good evening. This is an application for a 12-month extension to tentative track map 6679. It's located on the northwest corner of Gateway and Upjohn. This map is for an 87 unit single-family residential lots and 1 detention sump to be completed in 3 phases. Previously, this map has been granted 2 extensions by the Planning Commission. So if this extension is granted tonight, it will be the last extension available. Those prior extensions also included additions to bring it up with the current general plan. So the lighting, landscaping, all of those things have already been added. Staff would recommend approval for the additional 12-month extension.
Any questions from the commissioners?
Heather, do you know if they intend to break ground in the next 12 months, or is this just sort of arbitrary that we're...
You'll need to speak up or speak closer.
It's owned by PAM, so typically Pam markets the maps for sale, not actually develops them. So I don't know that there is any intention.
Okay.
Now, there are for sale signs on the property as well, right now.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the commissioners? Any questions from the public? Not seeing any, I would move that we approve tentative track map 6679. Is there a resolution number? Let me pull it up.
It's 2006.
The approval of resolution 2006. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Chairman Cox,
Aye.
Vice Chairman Rajaratnam,
Aye.
Commissioner Ferris,
Aye.
Commissioner Hayman,
Aye.
Commissioner Reed.
Aye.
5 ayes, motion carries.
Thank you. Moving on to our next section, industrial zoning use, proposed development for a property located at 453, this is a APN number, not located. It's 453-03241, Planning Commission zoning use interpretation. Staff report.
So staff received an application for a site plan review for a proposed project located in an M1 light industrial zone site. The proposed project is a long-term stay hotel. A preliminary review of the site by staff determined that the M1 use includes service commercial uses. Hotels, motels, and other all lodgings are permitted in the service commercial district. Municipal Code Section 20-18.2 states that permitted uses, when they're proposed, use does not fit the general description, the matter will be referred to the Planning Commission for interpretation. So this shows the site for the proposed development.
It's actually the vacant area, right?
Correct. It's where you see the tiny little red block.
The single red block?
Yes.
Okay.
So this is the submitted plans. This is what you see right now is the first floor. But the applicant submitted plans for the construction of 2 buildings consisting of 6 units and a lobby and mailboxes. The submitted plans identify each of the 6 units with 2 bedrooms and 2.5 baths, a kitchen, living room, dining room, outdoor patio, and laundry/utility room. This is the second floor of the submitted plans and includes the bedrooms of the units. The reason that it's before you tonight is staff is requesting that the Planning Commission review the submittal and determine if the proposed project is consistent with the M1 light industrial zoning designation. Staff would recommend either the Planning Commission consider either one of these options. The first option would be to determine that the site is consistent with the zoning designation and direct staff to prepare the applicant's submittal for site plan review at a later public hearing. Or the Planning Commission can determine that the proposed development is inconsistent with the zoning designation and direct staff to deny the application. I believe that we do have the applicant on the line, so you guys, if you have questions, you can direct it to them about the project.
Commissioner comments?
Chairman, I have to recuse myself because the applicant is customer of Mission Bank and I work for Mission Bank.
Thank you. So noted. Commissioner Rajaratnam is recusing. Any other commissioner comments?
I have one question. This is Commissioner Reed. How's the rent basis going to work on this? Is this going to be a monthly, yearly?
This is Lindsay, sorry, there's feedback. This is Lindsay Ingalls, architect, and just like any long-term stay, people can check in for the amount of days that they want to. Sometimes you just need a week, sometimes you need a couple months, and sometimes it might be, 5 days. And so just like any other hotel, you check in and check out on the days that you need to.
So, Lindsay, this is Commissioner Cox. A couple of questions that I would have. You're using a designation as a hotel versus apartments, and I don't see maids facilities or laundry facilities and caring for the room and the facilities here. I mean, in all practical purposes, this appears more as an apartment complex than a hotel.
For maid services, that would be a hired third party that would come in. Because people would be staying here longer than a day, usually with long-term stays hotels, you don't have the typical regular maid service that you would have for like a hotel room that's just one room or a motel.
Thank you. Any other commissioner comments?
I have a question. What is your,
Who are you?
I'm sorry, Commissioner Ferris. What would you suspect the length of stay at this kind of facility would be?
Our initial expectation is maybe 2 to 3 months. We're expecting that the biggest user would be military families that are on short-term contracts, or people repairing their houses where they need to move out for a bit, whether it's earthquake damage or mold remediation or they had a house fire, or if somebody were to get a job in the city of Ridgecrest and they need to move their whole family for that job and they're waiting for, their true home and finding that place to actually do a long-term lease that's a year or more, or to purchase a home in the city of Ridgecrest.
Thank you.
Any other commissioner comments? Do we have public comment? Okay, so seeing none. Coming back to Lindsay, I assume Lindsay is still on the line. The question I have, either in an M1, because I did read your letters and was concerned because it seemed it was a little misleading to me. It met your narrative, but it felt a little misleading, because when we read in M1 and even come down to Service Commercial District, yes, it does say all use is permitted in the Service Commercial District. And then in B, it itemizes those services from manufacture, compounding, storing, warehousing, assembly, and so on and so forth. And so unless we get into a general commercial or an R2, which if you're in apartments, an R2, I'm not sure that this meets the criteria for an M1. And that's the concern this commissioner has. Do you have any comments on that?
I feel the same.
I did actually, within M1, CS is allowed, which would include an apartment. Which would include an apartment hotel is what the actual term is in your zoning code.
Well, in general commercial, it mentions hotels. But in an M1, it still comes back to fabrication, manufacturing, processing of goods, retailing and administrative activities, wholesaling, storage, warehousing, limited food processing, research, and development, company offices, repair of services oriented to facilities, truck and rail facilities. The area designated for industrial use in the general plan provides opportunities for certain types of industrial uses. I don't see hotels until you get into general commercial. And this is an M1, which is light industrial.
Right, but general commercial is one of the, it says all uses listed in several other zoning codes are allowed in that use. And if you look at the context of what is surrounding that little corner of a building, you have veterinarian, doctor's office. What we're hoping is going to be this long-term stay hotel. You do have a drinking establishment, and then you have a salon. So none of those are industrial either. So I do feel that I understand and hear what you're saying, but from a general context, the other uses that are directly adjacent are falling into more of a commercial aspect.
Right, okay. Commissioners, comments? Travis?
So, Lindsay, it's Commissioner Ferris again. I appreciate this development, and looking at it, this is exactly what it looks like what Ridgecrest is needing and looking for. However, I agree with Mr. Cox that it is not zoned correctly, and for us to approve something, this really does need to be in an R2, not an M1.
With this
Our
design,
intention really is that it be a long-term stay hotel because Ridgecrest does not have any, from what we could tell from our research. And all hotel rooms are one single room. You don't, like, although some of them are called suites, it's still a studio where if you have more than just a couple, you know, husband, wife, or whatever couple you may have, then everybody's sleeping in the same room, so you don't have other options. So our question would be to you, if this is looking too much like an apartment and it's looking too comfortable, what can we do to make it look like a long-term stay hotel to you? Because we have no front yards, no backyards, no garages. This is truly meant to be a short-term.
Also absent from your diagram is any sort of office space for any management or caretakers, which, again, I love the concept, love the idea. I just think that it needs to be R2 because these truly are townhouses, not a long-term stay hotel.
The lobby is essentially the office because obviously only 6 mailboxes would be needed, and that space, I believe, is 10 feet by 15 feet to allow 1 or 2 employees.
Thank you.
Commissioner Hayman, do you have any comments that you would like to provide?
No, I don't.
Thank you. Any other commissioner comments? I would move that I would move that we deny the project because it's zoning. I'm like Commissioner Ferris. I love the project. I think it would be desired and completely appropriate for the city of Ridgecrest in an R2. I think that particular location or that area should stay with M1 or in general commercial to put a housing development or a long-term hotel as mentioned. But I would recommend that we deny the applicant and send it back to staff. Do I have a second?
I would second that motion.
Chairman Cox?
Aye.
Vice Chairman Rajaratnam? Commissioner Ferris?
Aye.
Commissioner Hayman? Commissioner Reed?
Aye.
4 ayes, motion carries.
Thank you to all that participated. Moving on, Commissioner assignments. Discussed these briefly at the beginning, and Commissioner Hayman, you were not here and privy to that. I would propose that we make some adjustments. Infrastructure would be Warren Cox and Travis. Economic development would stay the same as Solomon Rajaratnam and Bill Ferris. Parks and Recreation would be Travis and Vanessa. And City Org would be Vanessa and Bill Ferris. Do I have an approval of that or a second?
Do we have an all in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Vanessa?
Aye.
Okay. Commissioner items or comments? Anybody that has an item or comment?
I have one item, Commissioner Reed. I was doing some research the other day, and I know that we've got some areas of town out here that are what I would say are unbuildable to developers. They're areas that I just don't think that they feel wise spending money in. And California City recently did something that I thought was very interesting. They rezoned some of those areas for tiny houses. So you don't have to have a garage, you don't have to have yards, you don't have to have a lot of things like that. And I thought that that might be something that we could look at to see if it would be useful in some of our areas that we haven't seen building. We've seen abandoned houses and things like that.
So changing the zoning designation or coming up with a different zoning designation?
I think coming up with a different zoning designation or one that was in a combination, kind of like the mobile home combining ones that you see in some of Kern County and stuff like that. So seeing if there was a zoning designation that we could come up with that might better suit those areas to see some development.
Maybe what we could do is, if staff has time or if you have time, to actually designate on a map and bring to us these areas that you're considering or that you think would apply to this. I think that at some point, in temporary housing, when we think of some of the base engineers, some of them are coming here single, and a 600 square foot home, something that they're not having to do a bunch of maintenance on, may fit the bill.
Yeah, with a driveway.
Similar to this other project. In that case, but that other one was designed a little bit more for smaller families. I think was a great idea. So I think that's a good thing to bring up and for us to consider. Any other items?
I have one other one, and I briefly spoke to Heather about this. In passing, I heard about block grants, and I don't know much about them. I guess they're used quite a bit in some of the bigger cities, that you can get federal aid money to help you rejuvenate areas. And I thought that might be another thing that we could try to look into and see about obtaining to help some of our areas that are in a little more need than others.
Now, Lauren looks into a number of grants, and a lot of them to do with streets and ADA. That might be a good resource to ask him if he's aware of any of these block grants. Heather, any?
A lot of the housing and community development grants that we would apply for, that was why we did the annual report, because that makes us able to apply for grants in the future. Yeah, because we weren't eligible before because we had not completed those reports.
So that's in the process. So that's working then. Okay. Anything else?
That is all from me.
Commissioner Ferris?
I would just like to encourage the folks that we were just speaking with this development. I would really encourage you to look at doing this development in a little bit more of an appropriate area in Ridgecrest, because I think that this is something that Ridgecrest would benefit from having. However, it just needs to fit the zone and be zoned correctly. So I would just encourage you to look at other R2 designated areas. And that's it.
Thank you.
I would concur with that too. I think that this is
I would too. I would highly encourage them to pursue this, and I think the Planning Commission would be overwhelmingly supportive of it in an R2, even as a short-term, non-contracted facility, as people are moving in and out, as we have military that comes in from other countries that are servicing here. Those are some of the stays that would apply to. So I do too concur. Commissioner Rajaratnam.
No, sir.
Commissioner Hayman. Any commissioner items or comments?
No.
Staff items. Do we have Lauren on the phone? Any staff items that we need to do?
I am going to give you guys a little bit of update because I know you've been asking.
Terrific.
So, the Holiday Inn, obviously you probably all are aware, has already broken ground. So that project is underway. Red Rock, their building plans have been approved, so they are ready to go when they're ready. Town Place Suites and Oasis have both already submitted to building, so they're in the works. You might have already heard as well that Panda Express has submitted plans. The review for that project is going to be done as it was set in the commercial specific plan. So that will undergo a review staff-wise for substantial conformance with the specific plan. However, it will still come in front of you because they are requesting a variance for parking stall size.
What is the location? Where are they located?
The commercial specific plan is the Walmart site. So this is one of the out parcels in front of Walmart. So
Okay. Thank you.
that will be before you next month with a variance for the parking.
Okay.
And just one more is the grocery outlet. I know that did not come through planning because it's just a remodel, so I thought I would clarify that with you guys. But they will be having a grand opening in July.
And do we know any more about Arby's?
I do not.
It's become an eyesore for us.
Pardon me?
It has become an eyesore, I think,
Well,
China, like,
and I've heard that they're doing stuff inside, electrical and so on and so forth. I'm surprised that the wood is being remained open instead of being wrapped. And so I was just curious where it was with building, if they've had any inspections.
They had started work and then they have stopped. We don't know why. We did have code enforcement go out because Lauren had noticed that this fence was no longer secure and we wanted to prevent any damage to the building. So code enforcement was able to contact somebody and get them to make sure the fence was good. But other than that, we have not heard any word on what is happening.
I'm routinely out and about, and I haven't seen a vehicle there in months.
And code enforcement is out and active.
Yes.
So I'm still seeing illegal signs out there.
I think he's pulling them down and they're putting them up just as fast.
So the one that hit me recently is the batteries on Inyakern Road. It's right there by Sierra Auto Recycling, but it's the business right next door.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So they're putting a sign on the street on the other side, and now they're putting a sign in the parking right in front of their building. So I'm noticing that, so that's why I was asking if we still have active code enforcement out there.
Yes, if you notice the signs that appear at Walmart and on our other drainage sumps are, they disappear pretty frequently, but then new ones appear, so.
Okay. I would like also for you and Ron to take a look and see if we can narrow our reach on carports, and let's deal with them piece at a time. In other words, look at front yard, the utility easement and front yard setbacks, maybe what we want to do with them, because even though we've talked to the builders and developers of these kind of facilities, are still going up. And so I think at some point code enforcement is going to have some reasonability in their ability to enforce. And so I would like to see it come back, but rather than have the full-blown gamut, I think that I would like to personally, let's deal with the front yard, because we've got them in public utility easements. We had one taken down. It was bought back by the manufacturer, but it was painful for the homeowner. I think that we need to be even-handed, and so I would like to see this brought back. Any other comments from the commission?
I would agree with you on that, and I also think that code enforcement needs to have some authority to be able to deal with this, because
Right.
it really comes down to what's the repercussion if they don't take it down.
Well, the code right now is so ambiguous that it's hard to enforce. And so, yes, it's easy if they're in the public utility easement, we can make a big deal, but there's a 20-foot setback that's required in front yards. Now, some of the older parts of town don't have 20-foot setbacks. You know, some of the homes don't have that. And so there's things that we have to consider, but the reality is I think if we address it and it's clear and people continue to do it, they can't be unhappy when code enforcement shows up on their door and says, "Excuse me, did you get a permit?" Because we notified them last time that they all have to be permitted, including those that are selling and manufacturing. Doesn't mean a new guy doesn't come into town. And so it just gives code enforcement the ability if we clarify the ordinance. And that's really what we're trying to do. And last time we tried to do the broad side yards, backyards, everything else. And quite frankly, I think when we're trying to swallow the whole pill, it's just going to be too big. You know, unless it's a nuisance or a hindrance to a neighbor. You know, their runoff is running off into their yard, or it's an eyesore, or, you know, I'm stacking them 10 high, or things of that nature. So,
Is there nothing in the code that requires a permit for the amount of covered roof we have? I thought I remember seeing that.
well, anything that's over 100 square feet,
Feet,
but
has to
it's
be.
classified a carport, and so it becomes a little bit different.
Gotcha.
But the real thing that we're facing is the setbacks, because we have 10-foot utility easement from face of curb, and then we have a 20-foot setback from there. And in some instances, we've got them 8-foot back, 3-foot back, 12 feet back.
up to the sidewalk.
Yeah, you know, up to the sidewalk. And so, you know, in some instances, code enforcement, the way it's worded right now, it's ambiguous and it's just unenforceable. So, anyway, I'd like to see that come back. Commissioners?
I would say at this time the code enforcement officer should be a little bit sensitive to what is happening. You know, businesses are struggling, people are struggling. So
Right.
we don't want this to be an additional burden for them at this point.
That's true.
So I mean, we have to take care of these things, but I think this is not the right time, at least to enforce things. So
Sure.
thank you.
But some future item.
Yes.
Do you
Okay.
think maybe if the code was changed and they knew, hey, this is coming down the pipe, I bet you there would be some that might voluntarily find a spot to move it to and at least get it out of the front yard.
Well, they might. We had, in the public hearing portion, we had a fair amount of pushback. You know, what is it hurting? You know, so-and-so's got them. You know, well, you know, so you got a fair amount of pushback. In the one that we had removed, we had a fair amount of neighbors that pushed back. There's some that feel like Ridgecrest Heights needs an exemption. I don't feel that way. I think at some point we, at least, you know, like in infrastructure, which you'll find out, we've been discussing, you know, curb gutter, sidewalks, lighting, so on and so forth, to try and maximize not only safety but path of travel and things like that throughout the community. And I don't think that we need to have any part of the community that feels like it's less than another part of the community.
I wholeheartely agree with that.
And so I think that it needs to be fair and even-handed regardless of where you're living. So, Any other commissioner items that we would like, maybe future projects or updates from anybody?
Oh, I have one update on behalf of the Water District. We've recently been noticing that back when maps such as this one that we just granted the extension to came out, we weren't giving will serve letters for tentative maps. And actually, after talking to some of the engineers in this that do work out here, he said, you guys weren't giving will serve letters at all. So we're currently in the process of going back through and looking at that. So once our board has looked at it and everybody, we have a concise way, I can bring that to you guys. Hopefully we can get it implemented when we do the tentative phase maps that come in.
Thank you. Commissioner Hayman, anything from you?
No, I have nothing.
Thank you for calling in today, would you? So, seeing no other items,
Yeah.
we'll dismiss us at 6:37, new record.